The terminal buzzed with the usual chaos of morning departures, rolling suitcases, scattered announcements, and travelers rushing toward distant gates. Amid the noise, a small act of kindness bloomed quietly. Aisha, a slim black girl no older than 10, noticed an elderly woman struggling with a heavy carry-on. Without hesitation, she darted forward, wrapped her small hands around the handle, and steadied the bag. "Here, ma'am, I've got it," she said softly, her voice gentle but firm. The old woman blinked, surprised by the help. "Oh, thank you, sweetheart. My knees just don't move like they used to." Passengers nearby glanced over. A few smiled. In a place where everyone usually kept to themselves, kindness from a child felt rare, but not every onlooker responded with warmth. Behind the boarding counter, Brenda, the gate agent for Flight 227, stiffened. Her lips curled downward, as if the sight of Aisha's helpfulness had somehow offended her. The crowd saw a girl offering compassion. Brenda saw something else, a challenge to her authority, a spotlight she hadn't asked for. "Step away," Brenda barked, her voice slicing through the terminal noise. Dozens of heads turned. The old woman froze, startled. Aisha looked up, confused, still clutching the suitcase handle. Brenda stormed forward, yanking the bag out of the girl's grip. Her voice carried venom. "You don't belong up here. This is for paying passengers, not little pests running wild." Gasps rippled across the gate. The words had landed like stones. One man lowered his newspaper. A young woman fumbled for her phone, camera already recording. Aisha's eyes widened. She hadn't expected gratitude, but neither had she braced for cruelty. She took a timid step back. "I was just trying to help," she whispered. "Help?" Brenda sneered. "People like you don't help. You get in the way. Go sit down where you belong," the elderly woman bristled. "She was helping me. This child is kinder than most adults I meet in a week." But Brenda doubled down, her cheeks flushed with fury. "Ma'am, you don't understand. Kids like her cause trouble. Security should have rules about this." The insult hung in the air. It wasn't just about a child stepping forward. It was about race, class, and a woman in uniform using her position to shame the vulnerable. Everyone felt it. Aisha's small shoulders trembled. She bit her lip, fighting tears. Her kindness had been turned into a weapon against her. The moment should have passed quickly, an apology, a correction, but Brenda leaned into her cruelty. "Didn't your mother ever teach you manners?" "Oh, wait." Her voice dripped sarcasm. "Maybe she didn't." The crowd stirred. A businessman near the window muttered, "That's uncalled for." Another passenger, a middle-aged mother, stepped closer. "Leave the child alone. She's done nothing wrong." Phones lifted higher. Screens glowed. A live stream ticked upward, 30 viewers, then hundreds. Comments flew. "Why is she yelling at a little girl?" "Someone stop her." "This is ugly." Aisha clasped her hands in front of her chest. For a moment, she wished she could vanish into the crowd, disappear beneath the seats, melt into the airport floor. But she stayed still, rooted by a strange dignity even she didn't fully understand. The elderly woman placed a shaky arm around her shoulders. "Don't you listen to her, dear. You've been nothing but a blessing. It should have ended there. A correction, a recognition of innocence." Yet Brenda wasn't finished. She leaned over the counter, her words sharp enough to slice skin. "You think this makes you special? Let me tell you, trash doesn't turn into treasure. Not here, not anywhere." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Outrage mingled with disbelief. Someone whispered, "Did she really just say that?" Another answered, "She did. And it's all on camera. 5 seconds earlier, this was just another boarding gate. Now it was a stage of injustice. Every traveler an unwilling witness. And here lies the hook. A child's simple kindness, punished with venom, streamed across phones and hearts. But stay with us, because this story doesn't end with humiliation. It twists, it rises, and it proves that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can expose the deepest injustice. If you believe justice deserves a voice, don't scroll away. Subscribe to Black Voices Justice and stay with this story until the very last second. What begins as cruelty at a gate will soon transform into a revelation that stuns everyone. The next chapter will reveal how the woman behind that little girl the mother Brenda hasn't recognized, yet carries a truth powerful enough to turn the entire airport upside down. The sting of Brenda's words still hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Aisha stood small and silent near the boarding lane, her eyes fixed on the carpet, her shoulders tight. The kindness that had blossomed only minutes earlier now seemed crushed beneath an invisible weight. From across the waiting area, Naomi rose. She had been seated quietly, reviewing notes for her trip, unaware that her daughter had become the center of unwanted attention. Her eyes caught the trembling in Aisha's hands, the way the girl tried to hold herself together under the stares of strangers. Naomi moved forward with measured steps, her calm presence contrasting with the hostility that had poisoned the gate. She reached her daughter and knelt, adjusting the strap of the small backpack slung over Aisha's shoulder. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered gently. "Helping someone is never a mistake." Aisha looked up, her eyes damp but steady. "She said I don't belong here." Naomi brushed a curl of hair from her daughter's forehead. "You belong everywhere your feet take you." "Don't ever let anyone steal that truth." The nearby passengers leaned closer, sensing a quiet dignity in Naomi's tone. The mother's voice was low, but it carried strength, like a stone resisting the tide. Brenda, still at the counter, crossed her arms. "Ma'am, control your child. This is a secure area. We can't have kids disrupting procedures." Naomi turned her head slowly, her gaze landing on Brenda. Her eyes did not flare with anger. They simply observed, steady and unflinching. For a moment, Brenda shifted, unsettled by the calm scrutiny. Then she doubled down. "Next time, keep her seated," Brenda snapped. "I run a tight gate. We don't need pity acts for attention." The elderly woman Aisha had helped shook her head in disbelief. "Attention? That little girl lifted a bag for me because I couldn't manage. Shame on you." Naomi's hand rested lightly on her daughter's back, steadying her. She spoke once more, her tone still composed. "Respect goes further than rules ever will." The crowd stirred. Some nodded. Others lifted phones higher, unwilling to miss the exchange. Brenda's irritation only deepened. The gate agent felt her authority slipping, and she masked it with volume. "Ma'am, you're free to disagree," Brenda said sharply. "But on this side of the counter, I make the calls." Naomi did not reply. She simply stood, guiding Aisha toward an empty seat near the boarding lane. Her silence was not surrender, it was strategy. The tension, however, continued to coil around the space. Passengers whispered, debating whether they had just witnessed discrimination or simple rudeness. A young man in a denim jacket leaned toward his friend. "That wasn't just rudeness. You heard her. She meant it." His friend nodded, and the kid looked crushed. "This doesn't feel right." Nearby, a mother holding a toddler muttered loud enough to be heard. "Children should never be spoken to that way. Never." Brenda pretended not to hear, focusing on her screen, tapping keys with unnecessary force. But the comments carried. They were seeds of doubt sprouting in the soil of her authority. Naomi sat beside Aisha, her hands folded calmly in her lap. To anyone watching closely, her restraint seemed almost unnatural. Most parents would have erupted in defense, but Naomi's composure suggested a deeper confidence. She seemed to be waiting, gathering, allowing the moment to unfold without haste. Aisha whispered, "Are we in trouble?" Naomi shook her head. "No, love, not us. Trouble belongs to those who misuse their power." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that even Aisha felt. She nodded, pressing closer to her mother's side. The boarding display flickered with updates. Flight 227, on time, boarding in 30 minutes. Passengers shuffled in the background, but the atmosphere around gate B14 remained taut, stretched between cruelty and compassion. One question lingered in the air. Unspoken but heavy. How long could Naomi's calm hold against Brenda's aggression? Viewers of the live stream asked it aloud in scrolling comments. Why doesn't the mother fight back? Is she afraid? Or does she know something we don't? The answer had not yet been revealed, but every person in that terminal, and every unseen witness watching through a screen, sensed it. Something larger was unfolding. Before that truth surfaced, the story paused on this fragile image. A child who dared to be kind, a mother who chose silence over fury, and a gate agent who believed her authority was absolute. If you were Naomi, what would you do in this moment? Would you stand and argue, Risk escalating the conflict in front of your child? Or would you wait, knowing that sometimes patience uncovers more than anger ever could? Tell us in the comments what choice you would make. And if you believe dignity speaks louder than cruelty, subscribe to Black Voices Justice. The next part of this story will show why silence is not weakness and why calm often precedes the most powerful revelation of all. The hum of the terminal returned, but it carried a sharp undertone. Brenda straightened behind her counter, pretending to focus on the screen, yet her eyes darted toward Aisha with a look that burned hotter than any announcement blaring from the speakers. The elderly woman who had accepted Aisha's help stood defiantly near the boarding lane. "You should be thanking that child," she declared. "She carried my bag when no one else even noticed me." Several passengers nodded, murmuring in agreement. Yet not everyone sided with compassion. A man in a tailored suit muttered, "Rules are rules. Kids shouldn't be wandering around here." His words fed Brenda's pride, convincing her that her hostility had allies. Aisha clutched her backpack straps tightly, shifting closer to her mother. Naomi placed a steady hand on her shoulder, her voice low but clear enough for those nearest to hear. "Helping isn't a disruption. It's humanity." But Brenda seized the moment to assert her control. "Humanity doesn't board flights," she shot back. "Tickets and procedures do. And that's my job." The crowd felt the line between procedure and prejudice blur. Phones lifted higher. Streams scrolled faster. Viewers online typed furiously, "She's covering her bias with rules." Classic power trip. That mom is too calm, it's almost scary. Naomi's calm was intentional. She understood that outrage often clouds truth while patience sharpens it. Her silence was not surrender, but preparation. Still, the tension pressed against her like a storm waiting to break. Aisha, small but resolute, whispered, "Mama, did I really do something wrong?" Naomi leaned close. "No, love. You carried kindness, and kindness is never wrong." The words steadied the girl, but Brenda barked again, unwilling to lose control of the stage she had claimed. "Ma'am, if you don't discipline her, security might have to." "This is a federal facility," gasps cut through the air. To threaten a child with security officers over helping an elderly passenger felt excessive, even cruel. The businessman with the newspaper finally spoke. "She's a child. This is absurd," the young woman live streaming added. "It's not absurd. It's targeted. She singled the kid out because of how she looks." Her voice carried, emboldened by the crowd. Brenda's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." But her protest only highlighted what everyone already sensed. The issue wasn't about security. It was about something deeper, something uglier. Aisha sat down beside her mother, her eyes fixed on the floor. She was fighting tears, unwilling to let the woman behind the counter see her cry. Naomi watched, her expression unreadable. Inside, however, her resolve was crystallizing. The boarding screen flickered again. Flight 227, boarding soon. The reminder that this ordeal was unfolding in real time, with departure minutes away, added urgency to every whisper, every camera angle, every witness. The elderly woman raised her voice once more. "I have traveled for 70 years. Never in all my life have I seen such treatment of a child. You should be ashamed." But Brenda doubled down, her words loud enough to pierce every corner of Gate B14. "Ashamed? Not at all. I keep order. That's what keeps people safe." Passengers shifted uncomfortably. The justification rang hollow, a mask stretched thin over discrimination. And still, Naomi sat with poise, her daughter tucked close, her voice a whisper only Aisha could hear. Truth has its own way of walking into the light. From the live stream comments came a phrase repeated over and over. "Who is this mother? Why is she so calm?" No one knew yet. Not the crowd at the gate, not the thousands watching on their phones. Not even Brenda, who clung to her illusion of control. But soon, the truth would shatter every assumption. The first act of cruelty, the shaming of a child for an act of kindness, was only the beginning. What came next would ripple far beyond this gate, beyond this flight, beyond this airport. If you were standing in that terminal, would you have spoken up? Would you have defended the child or remained silent in your seat? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe voices matter in moments like these, subscribe to Black Voices Justice. This is only the start of a story that will transform from humiliation to revelation. The minutes ticked forward, but the tension at gate B14 refused to fade. Brenda adjusted her uniform jacket, a forced smile plastered on her face, yet her eyes betrayed the storm inside. She had been challenged in front of her passengers, and the sting of embarrassment gnawed at her. "People need to mind their own business?" she muttered loudly enough for the first row to hear. "Rules exist for a reason. Without order, chaos wins," a man across the aisle scoffed. "Order doesn't mean humiliating a child." Phones caught every word. Live stream comments poured in. "She's doubling down." "This is discrimination 101. Unbelievable." Brenda glanced at the glowing screens, her jaw tightening. The realization that hundreds, maybe thousands, were watching only fueled her anger. Instead of retreating, she leaned harder into her authority. "Anyone causing disruption at my gate risks missing this flight." "That's policy." The threat rippled across the crowd. Mothers hugged children closer. A group of college students exchanged incredulous looks. The elderly woman shook her head, muttering, "Policy doesn't excuse cruelty." At Naomi's side, Aisha sat with her hands clenched, fingernails pressing crescents into her palms. She was old enough to understand now. Brenda's words weren't about order. They were about her skin, her presence, the audacity of being visible in a space Brenda thought she didn't deserve. "Mama," she whispered, "she hates me." Naomi's voice was soft but steady. "She hates what she thinks you are. That's her blindness, not your truth." The words steadied Aisha, though her eyes still shimmered. The girl pressed closer into her mother's side, drawing comfort from the calm strength radiating there. Brenda's gaze lingered on them, her lips tightening. She felt the crowd's sympathy shifting toward the mother and child. It stung. She wanted the final word. She wanted to reassert dominance. "Enjoy your little show," she said, her voice sharp as glass. "But don't think for a second I won't remember this when it's time to board." Passengers stiffened at the veiled threat. The meaning was clear. She intended to punish them later. Naomi met her eyes, unblinking. There was no flinch, no outburst, only a calm that unsettled Brenda more than protest ever could. The silence was heavier than shouting. A businessman whispered to the live-streaming young woman nearby, "She's baiting them." "But the mom's not biting," the young woman replied. "She's too calm. I swear she knows something we don't." Brenda busied herself with the boarding monitor, fingers flying across the keyboard. But her mind wasn't on the system. It was on Naomi and Aisha. She pictured the moment of control when their tickets came under her authority. That was when she would reclaim power, when she could humiliate them under the guise of procedure. For now, she let the clock move. Boarding time would come soon enough. Naomi stroked her daughter's hair lightly, her voice just above a whisper. "Let the storm rage. It cannot drown us if we stand still." Aisha looked up, uncertain. "But she said she'll remember us." Naomi's eyes held steady. "So will the world." Around them, the murmurs continued, blending outrage with resignation. Some passengers wanted to intervene further. Others folded into silence, unwilling to risk conflict with someone in uniform. That mix of fear and courage painted the crowd in shades of complicity and resistance. And so the stage was set. A child who offered kindness had been branded a disruption. A gate agent, too blinded by her own pride, prepared to wield her small piece of power as a weapon. A mother waited, silent, her patience deeper than anyone could guess. From the live stream came a final burst of comments. "She's planning something. That agent is going to pay for this. The mom's eyes? Watch them. Something's coming." Brenda believed she was in control, that she could bend the rules to her will. What she didn't know was that every second of cruelty, every insult and threat was weaving a noose around her own authority. She thought she was winning. But the game had only just begun. If you've ever witnessed someone abuse their position for pride, you know how quickly small power can turn into great harm. What would you have done in this moment? Spoken up or stayed silent? Share your thoughts below. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe to Black Voices Justice so this truth reaches even further. The weight of humiliation pressed harder on Aisha's small frame. She stared at the carpet, its pattern blurring through tears she refused to shed. Her chest tightened with the unfamiliar ache of being reduced. Not for her actions, but for who she was. For the first time, she sensed the cruel truth. The woman at the counter didn't dislike what she had done. She disliked what she represented. "Why me?" she whispered into her mother's sleeve. Naomi leaned close, her hand steady against her daughter's back. "Because some people see shadows where light shines. But shadows can't erase light." Aisha wanted to believe her, but Brenda's voice cracked across the terminal like a whip. "That's the problem with today. People think pity passes for respect. Rules mean nothing if we hand them out to anyone who wants them." Gasps echoed. A college student shook his head. "She's not talking about rules anymore. She's talking about them." He gestured discreetly toward Aisha and Naomi. The live stream count surged. 30,000 viewers. Comments scrolled faster than the young woman recording could read. "This is open discrimination. Protect that little girl. Where's the supervisor?" But no supervisor came yet. The stage remained Brenda's, and she relished it. She leaned across the counter, eyes fixed on Naomi. "You can sit there quietly, but don't think I don't notice. When it's your turn at this gate, I'll be ready." Her words were not just warning, they were promise. A challenge flung across the narrow space between them. Naomi's gaze met hers, calm as still water. She didn't blink, didn't waver. She let silence answer where fury could not. The steadiness unsettled Brenda more than shouting would have. It was as if Naomi knew a truth hidden from everyone else. Aisha gripped her mother's hand. "She's going to hurt us, Mama," Naomi whispered. "She's already hurting herself." The elderly woman stood straighter, her cane planted firmly on the tile. "This has gone far enough. That child showed me more respect in 5 seconds than you've shown anyone in 20 minutes. But Brenda smirked. "Respect isn't carrying bags. Respect is knowing your place." The words sliced deeper than the air around them. The crowd erupted in divided voices. "Unbelievable. She's right. Rules exist." "No, she's a racist." Someone stop her. Every whisper became evidence. Every phone screen became testimony. Aisha trembled, but this time she lifted her chin. She whispered so only her mother could hear, "I'm not trash." Naomi squeezed her hand. "No, love. You are treasure, and treasure doesn't bow to anger." The boarding screen updated, "Flight 227, boarding in 20 minutes." The countdown only heightened the pressure. Soon lines would form. Tickets would be scanned. Brenda's threat would either vanish or erupt into action. The young woman live streaming looked into her camera. "Everyone watching, remember this moment. She's planning to block them. You can hear it in her tone. If it happens, the world will see." Brenda tapped the keyboard with unnecessary force, glancing up only to lock eyes with Naomi. "Let's see if your papers are as clean as you act." The businessman shook his head in disgust. "This is harassment." Pure and simple. Yet Brenda smiled thinly. She believed the gate was hers. She believed the ticket scanner, the uniform, and the authority of her station gave her power beyond question. What she didn't realize was that power built on prejudice collapses the moment truth steps forward. Naomi adjusted her daughter's backpack, her hands calm, her face unreadable. She knew the storm had not peaked yet. She was waiting for the right moment, the moment when silence would give way to revelation. And still, the crowd swirled with divided loyalties. Some passengers planned to complain, others whispered support for Brenda, hiding their prejudice behind the veil of rules. But the cameras kept rolling. Live streams multiplied. 50,000 viewers, 60. Each second, more witnesses joined the circle of accountability. Brenda thought the battle was about tickets, about procedure, about her authority. She didn't know that the battle was about to shift beyond her reach. She thought the boarding pass was the final word, but the truth waiting inside Naomi's bag would soon silence every voice at gate B14. If you've ever been judged not for what you did but for what you looked like, you know the sting Aisha felt in that moment. Share your experience in the comments. Your story could give strength to someone else. And subscribe to Black Voices Justice, because what happens next proves that dignity can turn even the harshest humiliation into power. The boarding announcement echoed across the terminal. Passengers rose, gathering bags, forming lines that snaked toward the counter. Brenda adjusted her blazer and lifted her chin. The moment she had been waiting for had arrived. Her eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Naomi and Aisha. A flicker of satisfaction crossed her face. She straightened the stack of boarding passes and tightened her grip on the scanner. This was her stage, her moment to remind everyone who controlled the flow beyond the gate. "Next!" she called, her voice sharp. Naomi guided Aisha forward. The girl held her small backpack close, her eyes wary but steady. Together, they stepped into the space that Brenda guarded like a fortress. Brenda snatched the tickets from Naomi's hand with unnecessary force. She turned them over slowly, too slowly, her eyes narrowing as though searching for flaws invisible to anyone else. The scanner beeped faintly, ready, but she ignored it. "These look questionable," she said, her tone heavy with implication. Gasps stirred through the line. The businessman from earlier muttered, "There she goes again." The live-streaming young woman zoomed in, capturing every flicker of expression. Tens of thousands of viewers watched Brenda's charade unfold in real time. Naomi's voice was calm. "Those are valid tickets. First class, row 3, Brenda smirked. "Valid? We'll see about that." She held the tickets up to the light as if counterfeit ink might reveal itself under fluorescent glare. Then, with a slow flick of her wrist, she let one slip. The boarding pass fluttered downward, landing face up on the carpet. Aisha bent instinctively to pick it up, but Brenda's voice cut through the air. "Leave it," she ordered. "Let your mother decide if she wants to crawl for it." The terminal hushed. Passengers froze, stunned by the cruelty. A father holding his toddler shook his head. "That's disgusting." The elderly woman clutched her cane tighter. Naomi didn't bend. She didn't flinch. She let the silence stretch, the weight of Brenda's words hanging for all to hear. Finally, she spoke. "Respect doesn't fall to the floor even if paper does." Aisha reached down, her small hands lifting the crumpled pass. She smoothed it against her chest and handed it back to her mother. Naomi accepted it with a quiet nod. Brenda's smirk widened. "See? Even she knows her place." The live stream exploded with outrage. "Unbelievable. That's abuse of power. She just told a child to crawl." Aisha's eyes shimmered again, but Naomi's calm presence steadied her. She whispered, "We rise by standing tall, not by bowing low." Brenda ignored the scanner once more, flipping the remaining ticket back and forth as though waiting for it to confess a crime. "Funny thing," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Sometimes fake documents look very real." "Until you know what to look for." Passengers in line shifted uncomfortably. A man in military fatigues spoke firmly. "Ma'am, those tickets are printed by the airline system." "They're not fake." But Brenda brushed him off with a wave. "Thank you for your opinion, but I'll decide who boards." Naomi stood motionless. She didn't argue, didn't plead. Her silence was louder than any protest. Brenda took it as weakness. The crowd, however, began to sense something else, an unsettling composure, a calm too deliberate to be fear. Brenda leaned closer, her words pitched just for Naomi, but loud enough to carry. "I told you I'd remember, and I always keep my word." Aisha's hand squeezed her mother's. Naomi placed her free hand gently over it. "Patience, love. The truth walks at its own pace." The scanner beeped again, ignored. The line behind them grew restless, murmurs rising. Phones tilted higher. Viewers online surpassed 90,000. The young woman live streaming whispered into her mic. "She's dragging this out. She wants humiliation before she allows them through." And in that moment, Brenda flicked the second boarding pass from her fingers. It fell beside the first, landing at Naomi's feet. The hush was complete. Every eye fixed on Naomi, waiting for her to bend. Brenda's smile curved cruelly, but Naomi didn't move. Not an inch. She let the paper rest where it had fallen, her head held high. Her silence turned the moment back on Brenda. What had been meant as humiliation now revealed itself as cruelty, plain to all. Brenda thought she had forced submission. Instead, she had exposed herself. She believed she was lowering Naomi. In truth, she had just stepped deeper into the pit she had dug with her own hands. If you were in line that day, watching a uniformed employee push dignity to the floor, what would you have done? Would you have spoken or stayed silent? Leave your answer below. And subscribe to Black Voices. Justice, so more people witness how injustice unravels itself when dignity refuses to bow. The silence after the second ticket fell was thick enough to hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Naomi stood tall, her gaze unwavering. Aisha clutched her mother's hand, her small chest rising and falling with quick breaths. Every camera caught the moment, and every viewer online knew something had broken. But Brenda refused to let go. She bent down, scooped the boarding passes from the floor with exaggerated disgust, and held them between two fingers like they were contaminated. "Look at this," she announced, raising her voice so the entire boarding area could hear. Sloppy printing. Thin paper stock. Doesn't feel right? The scanner beeped impatiently, demanding attention. Brenda ignored it. She tapped the tickets against the counter. Sometimes fakes slip through, but not here. Not on my watch. Murmurs spread like wildfire. The businessman shook his head furiously. "Those are airline issued. We all saw her check in earlier." The elderly woman bristled. "I've traveled enough to know a real ticket when I see one." "You're inventing lies." But Brenda smiled, a predator scenting blood. "System error, ma'am. Happens all the time. And system errors often expose fraud." She waved the boarding passes in front of Naomi. "These need verification. Until then, neither of you is going anywhere." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Aisha's eyes widened. "Mama, are we in trouble?" Naomi knelt slightly, meeting her daughter's gaze. "No, love." The truth doesn't hide. It only waits. But to Aisha, it felt like the truth had already been stolen. Dozens of strangers stared. Phones pointed like searchlights. For a child, it was not dignity on trial. It was existence. Brenda slapped the tickets on the counter and turned to the line. "Ladies and gentlemen, please understand security protocols protect us all. If I allow counterfeit documents, I put every one of you at risk." The words were crafted to cloak cruelty in responsibility. But the crowd was no longer convinced. The young woman live streaming spoke up. "No one here believes that. You're targeting them because you want to." The military man crossed his arms. "Show us proof these are fake. Otherwise, let them board." Brenda bristled, but her voice rose higher. "This isn't a debate. I'm authorized to refuse boarding if documents appear suspicious." Naomi spoke at last, her tone calm but cutting. "Suspicion without reason is prejudice in uniform." The words landed heavy, like a stone dropped in water. Ripples moved through the crowd. Some nodded. Some whispered. The live stream chat erupted. "Exactly. Say it louder." Prejudice in uniform. Brenda's cheeks burned. She jabbed the scanner with the first pass. The machine beeped green, clear, valid. She frowned, jabbed the second. Again, green, valid. The evidence glowed on the screen for all to see. Still, she shook her head. Strange. Sometimes counterfeit barcodes trigger false positives. The businessman shouted, "Stop lying! The system cleared them!" Brenda slammed the scanner down. "Enough! If you all want safety, then you'll trust me. These documents need security review. I'll call officers to verify." A collective groan rolled through the gate. People shifted angrily, voices rising. "You can't do that. This is harassment." "She's abusing her power." Aisha pressed closer to Naomi, whispering, "She wants to call police on us." Naomi rested her hand gently on her daughter's shoulder. "Then let her. The truth has witnesses." Her voice carried calm authority, but inside the crowd, fear and outrage blended. Viewers online surged past 100,000, comment feeds bursting with rage and disbelief. Brenda pulled a phone from beneath the counter, dialing quickly. "Security, I have fraudulent documents at gate B14. Request immediate response." The crowd erupted. Some passengers shouted over her. Others filmed closer. The young woman live streaming nearly shouted into her mic. She called security on a mother and child with valid tickets. "This is happening live right now." Naomi stood motionless, her posture unshaken. To anyone watching, she looked less like a passenger under suspicion and more like someone waiting patiently for a performance to end. Her silence unnerved Brenda, though she hid it behind volume. "Sit tight," Brenda ordered, slamming the phone down. "We'll let the officers decide. And believe me, they won't be as patient as I've been." The irony hung heavy. Patience was the one thing Brenda had never shown. The passengers buzzed with disbelief. The live stream exploded past 120,000. The world was watching, and Brenda had no idea she had just escalated a minor cruelty into a public catastrophe. She thought she had cornered Naomi and Aisha. She thought the game was hers, but in reality, she had just struck the match that would ignite a storm. What would you do if someone in uniform tried to brand you a criminal with no evidence? Have you ever witnessed power twisted into a weapon? The echo of hurried footsteps cut through the terminal noise. Two uniformed security officers approached Gate B14, drawn by Brenda's urgent call. Their radios crackled, their eyes scanning the scene as if danger might leap from the crowd. Passengers shifted uneasily, phones lifted higher. The live stream count surged past 150,000. Brenda straightened, her voice dripping with triumph. "Officers, right here. I've intercepted fraudulent documents. This woman and her child attempted to board with fakes. I disposed of the evidence, but we caught them in time." Her words painted Naomi and Aisha as criminals before either could speak. The officers frowned, glancing at the scanner still glowing green from the successful swipes. Yet Brenda spoke with such conviction that hesitation followed. Aisha gripped her mother's sleeve. "Mama, they think we're criminals." Naomi bent slightly, her voice calm. "Truth doesn't fear uniforms. It only waits to be seen." The younger officer stepped closer, addressing Brenda. "Where are the documents now?" Brenda gestured at the boarding counter. "Right there. You saw the way they looked. Cheap, sloppy, no official watermarks. I've been doing this for 15 years. I know fakes when I see them." The businessman in line shouted, "That's a lie!" The scanner cleared both. "We all saw it." The elderly woman raised her cane. "And I saw that child help me with kindness." "You're punishing her for being decent." The crowd fractured, some muttering agreement, others nodding grimly with Brenda. "Better safe than sorry," one man whispered. "Security comes first." Another snapped back. "Security doesn't mean racism. Phones caught every angle." The live stream chat scrolled furiously. "She's lying to the officers. Why don't they check the system?" This is abuse of power in real time. Brenda's confidence swelled at the division. She leaned toward the officers. "You see how emotional they all are? That's what happens when fraud gets exposed. They make a scene, try to spin it, but I know the rules." Her words carried the tone of authority, but her eyes betrayed something else, desperation disguised as confidence. Aisha tugged Naomi's hand. "What if they take us, Mama?" Naomi placed her palm over her daughter's trembling fingers. "Then we stand. Because truth walks with us." The older officer crouched, lifting the tickets from the counter. He examined them carefully, running his thumb across the embossed lettering. His brow furrowed. "These look standard. Security threads intact. Paperweight matches," Brenda snapped. "Counterfeits are clever now. They fool machines. They fool people." "Not me." The younger officer hesitated, caught between Brenda's certainty and the crowd's outrage. "Ma'am," he said to Naomi, "do you have identification besides these?" Naomi's lips parted, but she did not rush. She placed a hand gently on Aisha's shoulder. "Everything has its time." The words confused the officers, but the live stream audience buzzed. "She's waiting for something." Why is she so calm? "There's more to this." Brenda folded her arms, triumphant again. "See? No answer. That tells you everything." The businessman groaned aloud. "No, it tells us she's being patient while you dig your own grave." The crowd grew louder. One side shouted for fairness, the other for safety. The tension stretched taut, ready to snap. Through it all, Naomi remained still, her silence sharper than argument. She let Brenda fill the air with accusations, each word tightening the knot she was tying around herself. Brenda turned to the passengers, her voice rising. "This is what happens when people think rules don't apply to them. They lie, they cheat, they endanger all of us. But I won't allow it. Not while I wear this uniform." The uniform gleamed under fluorescent light, but its authority was cracking. Too many eyes had witnessed too much cruelty. Too many cameras had captured truth from too many angles. Naomi finally spoke, her words measured. Uniforms don't create integrity. Actions do. The crowd fell silent, her calm tone cutting deeper than shouting ever could. Even the officers paused. The live stream exploded. She said it perfectly. Uniforms don't create integrity. Truth is coming, Brenda, flustered, snapped back. Pretty words won't change the facts. Officers detain them until proper verification is complete. Aisha's breath caught. Naomi rested her hand on her daughter's shoulder again. Breathe, love. The storm always roars loudest before it breaks. Brenda believed the storm was hers, that the officers would side with her, that her words had sealed Naomi's fate. What she didn't realize was that the next move would strip away the illusion completely. She thought security would save her. She didn't know security was about to see what would silence the entire gate. If you had been there, would you have spoken against Brenda, or would you have let silence win? The terminal had fallen into an uneasy hush. Security officers stood poised, passengers whispered in half sentences, and cameras recorded from every angle. The scanner still glowed green, ignored, while Brenda hovered behind the counter like a victor savoring triumph. Officers, she pressed. Detain them now, before it's too late. The younger guard glanced at Naomi, uncertainty flickering across his face. Ma'am, he said carefully, do you have any form of identification besides these tickets? For the first time, Naomi moved with deliberate purpose. She released Aisha's hand, straightened her shoulders, and reached into her messenger bag. The motion was slow, steady, not hurried or afraid. Every camera tilted closer. The live stream counter surged past 200,000. Brenda let out a derisive laugh. Here we go. More fakes. Watch, she probably has a whole collection. Naomi placed a worn leather wallet on the counter. She opened it with quiet precision. Inside gleamed a gold emblem catching the fluorescent light, crisp holograms shifting as she tilted it forward. Naomi Carter, she said evenly, her voice carrying across the hushed terminal. Chief Inspector, Federal Aviation Administration. Criminal Enforcement Division. Silence crashed down. Passengers leaned forward. Phones zoomed in. Aisha's eyes widened, then glowed with sudden pride. She whispered, Mama. Brenda blinked, her smirk faltering. That can't be real. You expect us to believe this? Naomi didn't flinch. She laid the badge flat so everyone could see. The holographic eagle shimmered unmistakably. Alongside it, federal signatures and commission number gleamed with authenticity no forgery could mimic. This identification, Naomi continued, is issued under Title 49 United States Code, Section 44701, Federal Authority for Investigation and Enforcement of Aviation Law. Her words were not loud, but they cut through the terminal like steel. The older officer swallowed hard. That's legitimate. The security features are all correct, passengers gasped. The businessman slapped his thigh. I knew it. She's not just some passenger, the elderly woman beamed, tears shining. God bless you, child, the live stream exploded. Chief FAA Inspector? She's federal. Brenda just accused an inspector of fraud. Brenda staggered back a step, color draining from her face. No, that's impossible. She's lying. This has to be fake, too. Naomi met her eyes, calm as still water. Ignorance doesn't erase truth, and denial doesn't undo law. She placed a second card beside the badge, her Department of Transportation Enforcement authorization. The seal was identical to the one glowing from the badge. Every accusation you've made, Naomi said, every word of contempt, every false report, has been documented in real time by over 200,000 witnesses. A murmur rippled through the crowd, heavier now, tinged with awe. Phones tilted higher. Passengers realized they weren't just watching a confrontation. They were watching justice awaken in the middle of a boarding gate. Aisha straightened, her fear melting into pride. She whispered loudly enough for those near to hear, That's my mama. The crowd chuckled softly, tension breaking for a moment. Even the officers exchanged looks that mixed respect with unease. Brenda's hands trembled. She tried to gather her voice. You staged this. You're setting me up. Naomi shook her head slowly. No, you staged it. I only stood. The line landed like a verdict. The crowd erupted in gasps and murmurs. The live stream scrolled faster than screens could display. She only stood. This is history unfolding. The younger officer stepped back, straightening. Ma'am, he said to Naomi, voice steady now, how do you wish us to proceed? It was the shift Brenda hadn't expected. The officers now looking to Naomi, not her, for direction. Naomi placed her hand gently on Aisha's shoulder. Her voice softened. We proceed with truth, passengers nodded. Even those who had doubted moments before now saw the reality shining on the counter. Brenda, pale and shaking, realized too late that the uniform she had hidden behind was no shield against federal authority. She thought she had won. She thought she had humiliated. But with one calm motion, Naomi had transformed the accuser into the accused. Do you believe a single moment of silence can reverse an entire room? Comment below with your thoughts. The badge gleamed under harsh fluorescent light. Every detail, the holographic seal, the embossed lettering, the commission number, shouted authenticity. Yet Brenda clung to denial like a lifeline slipping through her fingers. No, she barked, voice cracking. This is staged. She planted that. You're all being fooled. Her hands trembled as she pointed at Naomi. Don't believe her. She's a con artist. Look at her! It's all an act, but the words rang hollow. Cameras zoomed closer. The live stream ticker leapt past 300,000. Comments flooded in. She's lying. Her panic says it all. This is the unraveling. Naomi did not raise her voice. She simply laid her hand on the badge, steady as stone. Under 18 U.S.C. Section 1361, willful destruction of federal property carries up to 10 years in prison. Under Section 1505, obstruction of a federal investigation carries up to 5 more. Both apply here. The officers stiffened. The older one shifted his stance, recognizing the legal weight behind every syllable. Brenda laughed nervously, a hollow sound. You expect me to believe burning some fake paper is a federal crime? Naomi's gaze was calm, unflinching. Ignorance of the law does not shield you from it. That was not some paper. It was a United States passport. Federal identification. Destroyed in public view. The businessman crossed his arms, nodding. And we all saw it. The elderly woman raised her phone higher. The whole world saw it. The live stream surged again, screens filled with hashtags, outrage, disbelief. Naomi continued, her words precise, like each one was an entry in an official report. You ordered my daughter to crawl. You declared valid tickets fraudulent. You weaponized a uniform to humiliate. And you attempted to erase identity by fire. Each action witnessed. Each one recorded. Aisha's chest swelled as she looked at her mother. Fear melted into awe. For the first time, she saw not just her mother, but the authority she carried, the quiet strength that needed no shouting. Brenda's face glistened with sweat. She waved her arms wildly. She's twisting everything. You people don't know the tricks. Fakes are everywhere. I was protecting you. But the crowd no longer believed. Murmurs of support shifted fully toward Naomi. Voices rose. Stop lying. You're finished. We trust her, not you. Naomi tapped the badge gently with her finger. This authority was not granted to entertain tricks. It was given to enforce law, and right now, law requires accountability. The younger officer spoke carefully. Chief Inspector, how should we proceed? The title struck like a hammer. Chief Inspector. Brenda's face drained of color. The ground beneath her illusion crumbled. Naomi inclined her head. Preserve the evidence. Secure the witnesses. Document everything. This gate is now a federal crime scene. The terminal gasped. Passengers froze, realizing the gravity of what they were part of. Phones filmed tighter. The live stream chat screamed in all caps. Federal crime scene. She just declared it. This is history. Brenda stumbled backward until her hip hit the counter. You can't do this to me. I was just doing my job. Naomi's voice cut clean. Your job was service. Your choice was discrimination. The difference is the line between work and crime. Her words hit harder than any raised fist. Even the officers bowed their heads slightly, acknowledging truth when they heard it. Aisha squeezed her mother's hand. Mama, You sound like the judge in movies. Naomi bent just enough to whisper, "Judges apply law, but truth speaks before them." The businessman shook his head. Muttering, "She's finished," passengers began chanting softly. A ripple building. "Justice! Justice!" Brenda's eyes darted wildly, searching for allies. But where once nods had affirmed her, now faces turned away, ashamed they had ever believed. Naomi folded her wallet closed, but left it on the counter, the gold emblem still visible. Her calm was not performance. It was power wrapped in restraint. "Understand this," she said, her tone steady. "Final. Every drop of sweat on your forehead, every word you've spoken, every act of malice, they are evidence now. Not excuses, evidence." The crowd shivered as the line landed, heavy as a verdict. Brenda didn't realize it, but the cameras had already sealed her fate. The world had witnessed her crimes, and no denial could rewrite the footage. She thought defiance could save her. Instead, it became the proof of her downfall. "Do you think Brenda has any chance of escape left?" The gate had transformed into a stage the world could not look away from. Phones hovered like lanterns, recording every flicker of expression, every word. Live stream counters spiked past 400,000, comments scrolling too fast for eyes to catch. Passengers who once shifted nervously now stood taller, their voices rising together. "Justice! Justice!" The chant spread until even those in the far corners of the terminal joined. Brenda spun wildly, searching for support. "You all know me," she pleaded. "I've worked here 15 years. I've kept you safe." Don't let her trick you, but eyes turned away. Where nods once affirmed her, now passengers avoided her gaze. Phones caught her desperation, magnifying it across the internet. The elderly woman, steady with her cane, spoke clearly. 15 years of work doesn't excuse 5 minutes of cruelty. The crowd murmured agreement. The live stream chat echoed. 5 minutes of cruelty destroys years of trust. Naomi raised her hand and the chants quieted. Her voice carried without force, yet everyone heard. "This gate is now a federal scene. Officers, secure the area. Preserve the evidence." The security guard straightened immediately. One moved to cordon off the wastebasket holding the charred remnants of the passport. Another began taking witness names. Passengers lined up eagerly, ready to testify. Naomi gestured calmly. "Collect the boarding passes. Photograph the scanner logs. Request passengers to preserve their recordings." Phones tilted higher still. The live stream chat screamed, "She's running the investigation." She just took command. "Brenda's finished." Aisha clutched her mother's hand, no longer trembling. Her eyes shone with pride. "Mama, everyone's listening to you." Naomi bent down briefly, whispering, "They're not listening to me. They're listening to truth." The businessman stepped forward, handing Naomi his phone. "I recorded everything, from when she dropped the tickets to when you showed your badge. Use it." One by one, others followed, offering footage, screenshots, timestamps. The volume of evidence grew by the minute. Brenda pressed against the counter, voice shrill. "You can't just take over. You don't run this airport." Naomi's reply was calm, but final. "Federal authority supersedes uniforms worn without justice." The line hit like a gavel. Even the officers nodded, acknowledging her command. The live stream surged to 500,000 viewers. Comments filled with awe, "She's dismantling the abuse in real time." "This is how you fight injustice, with law." Brenda's hands shook uncontrollably. "This isn't fair. I didn't know she was federal. How could I know?" Naomi looked at her steadily. "Fairness was the choice you denied us. Now fairness is the choice you cannot escape." Aisha's small hand tightened around her mother's fingers. The fear was gone. In its place, certainty. Naomi raised her voice again, her calm steady. "This incident is federal. Every witness here, every video recorded, every word spoken, all will be part of the record. And federal law will decide the rest." The crowd erupted in murmurs, some in shock, others in relief. They understood the tide had turned. The powerless mother Brenda tried to humiliate had revealed herself as the authority. The elderly woman whispered to the man beside her. She was quiet because she didn't need noise. She had truth. The businessman nodded. And truth is louder than arrogance. Brenda slid lower against the counter, sweat dripping, her voice barely audible. This can't be happening! But it was. And it was happening in front of 500,000 people, preserved forever in pixels and memory. Naomi placed her badge back into the leather wallet but left it open on the counter, the golden emblem still visible. It was no longer just identification, it was judgment. Passengers cheered softly, clapping in waves. The chant shifted from justice to thank you. Aisha leaned against her mother. Mama, you turned her words into nothing. Naomi kissed the top of her daughter's head. Cruelty always turns into nothing when it meets truth. Brenda's world shrank to the counter she clung to. The authority she had wielded so carelessly now felt like a costume stripped away. Naomi straightened. Her final words sealed the moment. This is not a dispute. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a federal case. The crowd froze at the declaration. The live stream chat detonated in all caps. Federal case. She said it. It's over. When Naomi said those words, everyone knew. Brenda's game had ended. Have you ever seen the powerful turn powerless in an instant? The rumble of heavy boots rolled down the terminal. Passengers instinctively parted, creating a narrow corridor. Phones lifted higher, capturing every second. The live stream counter surged past 500,000. Through the gap, a team of federal marshals advanced, their dark uniforms unmistakable. At the front strode Deputy Marshal Elena Ruiz, her voice steady, commanding. Clear the area! Federal authority! Gasps rippled through the crowd. Brenda pressed tighter against the counter, color draining from her face. No, this isn't real. They're not here for me. But Naomi stood tall, her badge still open on the counter. She inclined her head slightly. Deputy Ruiz, scene is secured. Evidence preserved. Suspect remains present. The words were clinical, but the weight behind them was unmistakable. Naomi was no longer just a passenger. She was the investigator in charge. Ruiz nodded once. We'll take it from here, Chief Inspector. Brenda shook her head furiously. Wait, no. This is a mistake! She's lying! I was protecting everyone, the businessman shouted back. Protecting? You burned her passport. The elderly woman's cane struck the tile. You humiliated a child. Phone swung toward Brenda, capturing her collapse. Sweat dripped down her temples as she raised trembling hands. Please, you don't understand. I didn't know who she was. Naomi's reply was calm, almost gentle. You didn't need to know who I was. You only needed to treat us with dignity. The marshals closed in. Deputy Ruiz recited firmly, Brenda Martin, you are under federal arrest for willful destruction of government property and obstruction of a federal investigation. Metal clicked. Handcuffs encircled Brenda's wrists. The sound echoed louder than her protests. No, please, I was just doing my job. Her voice cracked, but no one answered. Not a single ally remained. Aisha squeezed her mother's hand. Mama, they're taking her away. Naomi nodded. That's what happens when truth arrives. Pretending ends. The crowd erupted, some clapping, some cheering, others silently recording. The live stream chat detonated. She's cuffed. Federal justice in action. 500,000 witnesses. Brenda stumbled as the marshals led her away, her airline uniform rumpled, the symbol of authority now reduced to evidence against her. She turned once more, eyes pleading with passengers who refused to meet her gaze. Naomi bent to Aisha, whispering softly, Remember this, love? Power built on cruelty never lasts, Aisha whispered back. Because truth walks longer, Naomi smiled faintly, her calm unbroken. The marshals carried Brenda past the line of passengers. Every phone raised, every lens preserving her fall. Deputy Ruiz called back to Naomi. We'll file the transfer report within the hour, Naomi answered. I'll add my documentation. Witness statements are abundant. The terminal exhaled as the boots faded. Passengers murmured, processing what they had seen. The chant started again, softer this time, more reverent. Justice, justice. Naomi lifted her wallet, closed it, and slipped it back into her bag. For her, the scene was not triumph, it was evidence. And when the handcuffs closed, everyone understood. Truth does not need to shout to be heard. The sound of handcuffs had faded, but the gate still buzzed with tension and awe. Passengers remained clustered, phones aloft, the air thick with the sense that they had witnessed something larger than a single arrest. Naomi turned to Deputy Ruiz. Her voice carried calm authority. "Marshal, ensure all recordings are preserved. Every phone, every camera. This incident is evidence now," Ruiz nodded, signaling her team. Officers moved through the crowd, politely requesting passengers to register their videos and photos. Instead of resistance, hands shot up eagerly. People lined forward, offering screens, USB drives, links. The businessman pressed his phone into an officer's hand. "Here, I filmed every second." "Use it!" The elderly woman leaned on her cane. "I'll testify. That girl helped me when no one else did. The world should know." One by one, voices rose, teachers, students, travelers from abroad, each willing, even proud, to stand as a witness. Aisha tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mama, why are they helping so much?" Naomi knelt to meet her daughter's gaze. "Because truth is heavy when carried alone. But when many share it, it becomes light and unstoppable." Aisha's eyes widened with understanding. She whispered, "So we're not alone?" Naomi smiled softly. "Never." Overhead monitors blinked updates, but no one looked. All eyes were fixed on the counter-turned courtroom. Phones vibrated with notifications, hashtags rising. Within minutes, Justice at Gate B14 dominated trending lists. The live stream soared past 600,000 viewers. Comments flooded in. "I'm crying watching this live." She turned humiliation into justice. "This is history at an airport gate." Naomi addressed the passengers once more, her tone steady but warm. "Your courage to stand, to film, to speak, it matters. Today is not just about one uniform or one gate. It is about all of us, and whether dignity is defended when tested." The crowd nodded, murmuring agreement. Some applauded quietly, others simply held their phones higher, as if raising torches in a vigil. Deputy Ruiz's team sealed evidence bags with the charred passport fragments, tagged the scanner logs, and photographed the counter. Naomi oversaw each step, noting details on her tablet. She glanced at Aisha, who watched intently. "Everything leaves a mark," Naomi explained. "Words, actions, even silence. We gather those marks to reveal truth." The girl nodded solemnly, gripping her backpack straps. "And now everyone can see it." Yes, everyone could. From the hundreds gathered at the gate to the hundreds of thousands online, the circle of witnesses had grown too wide to ignore. Naomi straightened, her voice carrying finality. "This record will not fade. Today has been documented, not just for me, but for all of us. And the record belongs to truth." The gate hushed, the weight of her words hanging like a verdict. Phones caught every syllable, and when hundreds stood united, truth left no space for shadows. Do you believe in the power of voices raised together? Share your thoughts in the comments, and spread this story so more people understand that justice grows stronger when we stand side by side. Outside the glass walls of the terminal, the world was already moving faster than anyone inside could track. The live stream counter climbed past 800,000. Screens across the nation lit up with the same image: a gate agent in handcuffs, a calm inspector standing tall, and a child clutching her mother's hand. Hashtags erupted like wildfire. Justice at Gate B14 hit the top of trending lists within minutes. Close behind came Jacket Truth at the gate and Dignity over Uniform. Clips spread across platforms, TikTok edits looping the moment Naomi placed her badge on the counter, Twitter threads recounting the elderly woman's testimony, Instagram reels amplifying Aisha's small but powerful words, "That's my mama." Major news outlets broke into programming. Anchors spoke with urgency. "We're following breaking news at O'Hare International Airport, where a federal inspector's identity was nearly destroyed in an alleged act of discrimination." Reporters rushed to the terminal, cameras flashing as passengers streamed out to give interviews. Some were still shaking, others tearful, all echoing the same truth. They saw injustice, and they saw it undone. Politicians weighed in within the hour. A congresswoman tweeted, "Accountability must reach every gate, every airline. This cannot be dismissed as one employee." Civil rights groups issued statements. demanding systemic review of airline practices. Inside the terminal, Naomi remained composed, still guiding officers through evidence collection. But she felt the shift in the air, the awareness that this was no longer just a boarding dispute. It was national. Aisha tugged her sleeve. "Mama, why is everyone outside talking about us?" Naomi crouched so her eyes met her daughter's. "Because when injustice hides, people feel alone. But when it's exposed, it belongs to everyone. And people care because truth reminds them what dignity looks like." Aisha's brow furrowed, then smoothed. "So now they're helping us carry it." Naomi smiled. "Exactly." The businessman checked his phone, shaking his head in disbelief. "CNN just played the live stream." "You're on every screen," another passenger gasped. "Look, politicians are already calling for hearings." The terminal buzzed with realization. They were witnesses not just to an arrest, but to the birth of a movement. Naomi gathered the last of her notes, speaking calmly to Deputy Ruiz. "Media will amplify. Politicians will react. But what matters most is the record we've secured. The record will speak louder than any headline," Ruiz nodded. "Still, the headlines are carrying your voice." Naomi glanced at Aisha, then back at the crowd. "It isn't my voice. It's the truth. And once truth is amplified, it cannot be silenced." Aisha leaned against her mother. "Will they still talk about this tomorrow?" Naomi brushed a hand over her daughter's curls. "Tomorrow and the day after. Tomorrow it won't just be passengers. It will be newspapers, classrooms, maybe even the floor of Congress. One moment can echo far beyond itself." The passengers around her grew quiet, sensing the weight of her words, and when justice rose to the top of trending lists, no one could turn away. Have you ever seen a small truth ignite into a wave too large to stop? The gate had transformed. Hours earlier, it was chaos. Now it was a press arena. Rows of cameras stretched back, microphones bristled forward. Flashes fired in bursts, capturing every breath. Naomi stepped into the circle with Aisha at her side. Calm, centered, her badge still glinting at her hip. The crowd hushed instinctively. She began simply. "First, I thank the passengers who stood, who filmed, who spoke. Your courage created accountability. Without you, this moment would not exist." Applause rippled through the crowd. Reporters leaned closer. Naomi continued, her voice steady, measured. "What occurred here is not only about one employee nor one gate. It is a symptom of something larger, when appearance is mistaken for fraud, when dignity is treated as optional." "That must change," questions erupted. "Will you press charges against the airline? Is this part of a federal investigation? What reforms do you expect?" Naomi lifted a hand and, remarkably, silence returned. "I will not answer every question tonight, because the investigation continues. But I will say this, accountability must extend beyond a single uniform. Airlines are custodians of public trust. That trust cannot survive discrimination. The cameras captured every word. Passengers who had witnessed the morning's events nodded, tears in some eyes. Aisha tugged gently at Naomi's jacket, whispering just loud enough for the microphones. "Mama doesn't just fly. Mama makes others rise," the crowd murmured, charmed by the child's innocence cutting through the tension. Naomi glanced down, her lips curving in the faintest smile, then faced the cameras once more. A reporter pressed again. "Chief Inspector, what will you do next?" Naomi reached into her bag. Slowly, deliberately, she withdrew two objects, a freshly issued temporary passport and a charred fragment of the old one. She held them side by side, turning them toward the cameras. "Paper burns," she said softly, the microphones catching every syllable. "But dignity does not." A hush fell. Even the clicking shutters paused as if the moment demanded stillness. She lowered the fragment gently into an evidence pouch, then raised the intact passport higher. "This investigation is not just about my dignity, but about every traveler who deserves to move without humiliation. We will not let this moment be dismissed. It will be remembered, and it will lead to change." Reporters scrambled to capture the line. Commentators would repeat it across evening broadcasts. Hashtags multiplied instantly. "Paper burns dignity does not." Naomi closed her statement with clarity. "Justice is not revenge. It is restoration." And it begins here, but it will not end here. She stepped back. Questions surged again, but she answered no more. She had said enough, and the silence that followed carried more power than any reply. Aisha looked up, eyes shining. Naomi squeezed her hand. Together they turned from the cameras, walking toward the waiting federal convoy, and in that moment, the terminal seemed to hold its breath, as if listening to a verdict. When truth is spoken with calm certainty, the world cannot forget. Within hours, Naomi's words had traveled far beyond the walls of O'Hare. News anchors replayed the clip in endless loops. Commentators paused reverently each time the line returned. Paper burns, but dignity does not. Headlines stretched across front pages. Dignity does not burn. Justice at Gate B14. Federal inspector turns discrimination into reform. Editorials called it one of the most powerful public statements of the year. Politicians seized the moment. A senator announced on live television, "We will open hearings into systemic discrimination in air travel. This incident is not isolated. It is a warning." Committees scheduled emergency sessions, civil rights leaders gathered for press conferences. One declared, "Naomi Johnson has shown us the strength of calm in the face of cruelty. She is proof that dignity can disarm hate." The soundbite raced across the internet. Ordinary citizens responded too. Social feeds filled with posts. "I was pulled aside for extra screening because of my last name." "My mother was asked if her passport was real." Each story added weight, building a chorus. The hashtag $MyGate story surged alongside "Dignity does not burn." Families shared decades of small humiliations, now bound into one national reckoning. In the quiet of her hotel room that evening, Aisha sat curled on the bed, watching news anchors replay her mother's words. She whispered, "Mama, why are they calling you a symbol?" Naomi sat beside her, brushing a hand across her daughter's hair. "I don't want to be a symbol. I only want justice to work so no child ever has to watch what you saw today." "But everyone says you're making change." Naomi smiled faintly. "Then let them say it. But remember, change isn't made by one badge. It's made by many voices refusing to be silent." On television, a commentator spoke over slow-motion footage of Naomi raising the burned passport fragment. In one gesture, she reframed the national conversation. This is not about counterfeit papers. This is about the value of identity and the cost of prejudice. Clips of passengers from that day filled the screen. The businessman, the elderly woman with her cane, the teenager whose live stream had reached millions, all telling reporters the same truth. They saw discrimination, and they saw it confronted. Aisha turned, eyes wide. "Mama, does that mean tomorrow everyone will still talk about this?" Naomi nodded. "Yes, child. Tomorrow and after that. Because justice is never just one person's story. It belongs to all of us." The nightly news carried that line in bold text. Justice is never one person's story, and when millions began telling their own stories, truth became the common language. The marble halls of Congress carried a different kind of echo that morning. Not tourists, not school children, journalists, staffers, and citizens pressed shoulder to shoulder, waiting for a hearing that had been scheduled in haste, yet felt decades overdue. Inside the chamber, cameras rolled. The seal of the United States glimmered above a long desk where lawmakers sat in rows. At the witness table, Naomi Johnson adjusted her microphone, calm as if she had prepared her whole life for this seat. Aisha sat quietly in the gallery, eyes fixed on her mother. The clerk swore Naomi in. She raised her hand, oath steady. "I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." Her opening statement cut through the air. What occurred at O'Hare was not a single act of cruelty. It was the visible symptom of a deeper disease. 17 documented complaints against one employee were dismissed. 17 voices unheard. That pattern is what allowed a passport to burn in public. Lawmakers leaned forward. Some scribbled notes furiously, others simply stared. Naomi tapped her tablet, projecting data onto large screens. Charts of complaints, timelines, racial patterns across airline reports. This is not speculation. It is evidence, and unless addressed, it will repeat. One congresswoman nodded sharply. What reforms do you recommend, Inspector? Naomi's answer was precise. Independent federal oversight at all major hubs. Mandatory bias detection technology integrated into gate systems. Continuous training, not annual checkboxes. And accountability that reaches beyond individuals to management decisions. Applause murmured from the back, quickly hushed. But not all were supportive. A congressman leaned forward, voice sharp. Inspector Johnson, are you suggesting federal micromanagement of private airlines? Naomi met his gaze without flinching. I am suggesting that federal contracts carry federal responsibilities. When civil rights are violated at the gate, federal silence makes us complicit. Another asked, softer but pointed, Inspector, why did you remain calm while your passport burned before you? The room hushed, every microphone leaning in. Naomi's reply was measured, deliberate, because anger burns fast. But calm collects evidence, and evidence builds justice. The silence that followed was total. Then, slowly, applause swelled from the gallery. Even some lawmakers joined in, hands striking desks. News outlets clipped the line instantly. By evening, it scrolled across banners. Calm collects evidence. Commentators called it a mantra for a new era of civil rights enforcement. Aisha whispered to the woman beside her, That's my mama. The cameras caught it. Another moment replayed again and again. Naomi concluded her testimony with the same steady resolve. I am not here for revenge. I am here for reform, and reform must be enforced, not requested. The gavel struck, but the echo of her words outlasted the sound. And in the heart of Congress, a calm voice summoned justice. The chamber of Congress was silent except for the clicking of electronic vote counters. Each green light that blinked on meant another lawmaker in favor. Reporters held their breath, cameras trained on the board. When the final tally flashed, the room erupted. The vote was not close. By overwhelming majority, the Aviation Civil Rights Reform Act had passed. Journalists rushed to broadcast the provisions, mandatory bias monitoring systems at every major airport, continuous civil rights training for all frontline staff, and a federal oversight committee empowered to investigate passenger complaints within 48 hours. For the first time in decades, discrimination in air travel would face structural scrutiny, not just apologies. In corporate towers across the nation, airline CEOs read the news with grim faces. Shareholders demanded compliance. Contracts worth billions were now tied directly to civil rights performance. The choice was clear: adapt or lose access to federal routes. Cameras captured images of executives testifying reluctantly. We will comply fully, one stated, jaw tight. Another admitted, the public trust requires us to do better. Back in her office, Naomi did not celebrate. She wrote a single line in her official report. Step 1 completed. Oversight secured. Aisha peeked over her shoulder. Mama, does this mean no one will ever treat us like that again? Naomi set her pen down and turned to her daughter. It means fewer will try, because they now know the world is watching. And it means when it happens again, people will have tools to fight back. That's the power of not staying silent. Aisha nodded slowly, processing. So because we spoke, other kids won't have to. Naomi brushed a hand across her daughter's cheek. That is the hope. And hope, when written into law, becomes protection. On the Capitol steps, lawmakers gathered as the bill was signed. Flashbulbs fired in rapid bursts, applause rising as the president's pen struck paper. Across television screens, commentators declared it a landmark moment, the day a burned passport rewrote federal law. Families at home watched, some with tears, some with relief. Travelers who had once felt powerless now saw their dignity written into policy. Inside the chamber, members of Congress rose to their feet, clapping in unison. The sound filled the marble halls, a thunderous recognition that the past had been heard and answered. Naomi stood quietly at the edge, unseen by most cameras, her badge tucked away. She did not need the spotlight. She only needed the system to work. And in that moment, as applause shook the chamber, memory itself seemed to change shape. When a single vote became law, a moment of humiliation transformed into a charter of protection. Do you believe one personal event can reshape an entire industry? Share your thoughts in the comments and join us at Black Voices Justice. Because when pain becomes law, it becomes protection for all. The ripple began in airports but did not stop there. Within months of the Reform Act, other federal agencies announced their own initiatives. The Department of Justice launched a civil rights task force to expand bias monitoring into federal buildings. The Department of Health directed hospitals to test systems that flagged disparities in how patients were treated at intake desks. In schools, teachers piloted software that tracked participation patterns, ensuring every voice in the classroom was heard equally. If fairness can be measured, one superintendent explained, then fairness can be protected. Across communities, people felt a shift. Complaints once buried in silence now found official channels. Stories emerged of workers being denied promotions, patients being second-guessed, students being questioned unfairly. And for the first time, those stories were met not with shrugs, but with investigation. Naomi became central to the effort. She was invited to join interagency panels, her calm precision shaping new standards. Articles described her as the inspector who turned humiliation into reform. She resisted the title, insisting she was only doing her job. But her presence gave reform a face, steady, unshaken, resolute. At home, Aisha watched her mother's image appear on magazine covers and nightly broadcasts. One evening, she asked, "Mama, are you working for the whole world now?" Naomi set aside her papers and smiled gently. "No, child. I am working for justice, and justice belongs to everyone." That answer spread too. Quoted in newspapers, repeated on talk shows, it became another rallying cry. International leaders took notice. At a civil rights summit in Geneva, Naomi addressed a hall of delegates. She outlined the system first tested in airports, now adapted for schools, hospitals, and government offices. Screens behind her displayed charts, declines in discrimination complaints, increases in accountability. Her words carried not only statistics, but hope. What began at a boarding gate is not about air travel alone. It is about human dignity wherever it is tested. The hall rose in applause, a wave of sound that seemed to affirm the truth. Cameras captured the moment, broadcasting it across continents. For Aisha, watching from the gallery, it was simple. She whispered to herself, "Mama makes the world breathe better." In communities across America, families echoed the sentiment. People felt safer stepping into offices, clinics, and classrooms, believing someone was watching, not to punish, but to protect. Naomi returned home late that night, weary but steady. On her desk lay two objects she always kept close, the fragment of her burned passport and the temporary one issued after. One reminded her what had been destroyed, the other what had been rebuilt. She wrote in her journal, "When justice leaves the gate and enters daily life, society exhales." And that was the truth. When justice walks out of airports and into schools, hospitals, and offices, society begins to breathe differently. Do you believe a single reform in one industry can inspire change across an entire society? Years had passed since the flames at Gate B14. Brenda Martin had served her sentence, walked out of prison, and entered a different kind of confinement, the burden of memory. Now she stood in a modest community center, speaking to a group of service workers about bias and accountability. Her voice trembled as she began. "I destroyed more than a passport. I destroyed trust. I destroyed a child's belief that authority could be fair." The audience shifted uneasily. Then the doors at the back opened, and Naomi Johnson entered. Aisha, now a teenager, walked beside her. Whispers rippled through the room. The victim of the infamous burning stood face to face with its perpetrator. Brenda's hands shook. "Chief Inspector, I never thought I'd see you here." Naomi approached slowly, her posture calm, unwavering. "I was invited to speak about reform. I didn't expect to meet the reason reform became unavoidable." Brenda lowered her gaze. "I cannot undo what I did. Every night in my cell, I replayed the moment. The match, the flame, the silence after. I know I will never deserve forgiveness." Naomi studied her. The room held its breath. Finally, she spoke. "You destroyed dignity. But you also revealed a wound the system ignored. Without your act, painful as it was, the reform may have come too late. Justice is strange that way. It sometimes grows from ashes. Aisha stepped forward. Taller now, her voice carried steadiness beyond her years. I was that child. I remember the smell of smoke. I remember people filming but not helping, until Mama showed them calm was stronger than hate. Seeing you now, admitting what you did, it matters. Brenda's eyes filled with tears. I am sorry, Aisha. I am sorry, Naomi. Not just for the document, but for the dignity I tried to strip away. Naomi reached into her bag and withdrew a framed document, the Aviation Civil Rights Reform Act. She placed it on the table between them. This law exists because of that day. You tried to burn identity. Instead, you ignited accountability. The audience leaned forward, the air charged with something more than tension. Possibility. Brenda whispered, "Why bring this to me?" Naomi's answer was steady. Because justice must punish, yes, but it must also teach, and sometimes it must heal. I cannot erase the past, but I can ensure its pain serves the future. Slowly, Naomi extended her hand. Brenda hesitated, then clasped it, tears slipping free. The room erupted in applause, not of victory, but of recognition. Aisha wiped her own eyes, whispering, "Mama." It feels lighter now. Naomi squeezed her daughter's hand. Because justice is not complete until it gives space to rise again. And when two people who once stood on opposite ends of humiliation shook hands, the room understood. Justice is not only punishment, it is also restoration. Years later, Naomi Johnson's name had traveled far beyond O'Hare, far beyond Chicago, far beyond the United States. It had become part of international training manuals, civil rights curriculums, and leadership seminars across the globe. At the United Nations, she stood before delegates from every continent. Behind her, screens displayed statistics, complaints down by 70% in American airports, similar declines in hospitals and schools. The system first born of ashes at a boarding gate now functioned as a global standard. The European Union adopted her bias monitoring model in transportation hubs. The African Union used it to audit hospitals. ASEAN implemented it in government service counters. Each adaptation carried the same principle. Dignity must be measured so dignity can be defended. Yet Naomi resisted the pedestal. At every press event, she reminded audiences, "I am one inspector." The credit belongs to the thousands who reported, recorded, testified. Justice is not a solo effort. It is a collective act. In the audience of one such summit sat Aisha, no longer a child. Now a university student, she had begun speaking at youth conferences, her voice steady like her mother's once was. "I learned," she told peers, "that calm is not weakness. It is preparation, and preparation creates change." The world listened to both mother and daughter, recognizing a legacy passed like a torch. The climax came in New York, at a global civil rights conference. Naomi addressed the assembly, her words carried in dozens of translations. What began with ashes at a gate now guides nations. A single act of destruction revealed the urgency of reform, and reform, once written into law, became a template for all who seek dignity. Delegates rose in applause, wave after wave. Cameras flashed, headlines formed in real time. By the conference's end, more than 100 nations signed a joint resolution to integrate bias monitoring into their institutions. Commentators called it the new Geneva Convention for Dignity. Aisha sat in the gallery, her notebook open, recording every phrase. She felt the weight of history, yet also the intimacy of memory. The smell of smoke at gate B14, the trembling in her small hands, the calm in her mother's voice. Now that memory belonged to the world. After the session, journalists pressed forward. One asked Naomi, "Do you see yourself as a global symbol now?" Naomi shook her head gently. "No, I see myself as a witness. Symbols fade, systems endure. What matters is not my name, but that no child, anywhere, must see their parent humiliated for who they are." Her words flashed across headlines once more, and when a personal memory becomes an international standard, the world learns this truth. Justice has no borders. Do you believe a single personal story can become a global standard? The office was quiet, filled with the hum of distant city traffic. Afternoon light spilled through tall windows, glinting off framed awards and policy documents. On the desk lay three objects Naomi never moved: the charred fragment of her old passport, a bound copy of the Aviation Civil Rights Reform Act, and a stack of handwritten letters from strangers who thanked her for standing calm when it mattered. Naomi adjusted her glasses, pen in hand. She was writing, not another report, not legislation, but reflections for her daughter and for whoever came after. Justice is not loud. Justice is patient. It does not arrive in a roar, but in steady steps documented, witnessed, and remembered. The door opened softly. Aisha stepped in. No longer the child clutching her mother's hand, but a young woman preparing for her own conference on youth advocacy. "Mama, I came to say goodbye before my flight." Naomi looked up, eyes soft with pride. "Already leading your own panels." "Time runs fast," Aisha smiled, "because you showed me how to use calm as strength." They sat together, the silence comfortable. Naomi gestured to the fragment of passport. This burned, but it became evidence. This law beside it, born from that evidence. And these letters, proof that dignity can multiply when defended. Aisha traced the edge of the frame. "Do you ever wish it hadn't happened?" Naomi considered. "I wish you had never felt fear that morning. But I do not wish away the change that followed. Pain is never asked for. But when it comes, we choose whether it rots or reforms. I chose reform." Aisha's eyes glistened. "And the world followed." Naomi shook her head gently. "The world followed not me, but the truth. I was only its steward." She placed her hand over her daughter's. "Remember this. Power is not in the badge or the law alone. It is in the witnesses who refuse to look away, in the voices that speak when silence feels safer. That is where justice grows." Aisha nodded, her voice steady. "I'll carry it forward." Naomi leaned back, closing her notebook. Her final line read, "The passport burned, but the dignity multiplied." For a long moment, they sat together, the sun dipping lower, casting gold over the relics of a past transformed. Outside, the world prepared for another day, another struggle. Inside, a mother and daughter sealed a legacy, not of pain, but of persistence. And when Naomi set down her pen, history did not close. It turned its page. When memory becomes legacy, the next generation knows. The story is not finished. It is only beginning. The screen darkens, then slowly fills with images, ash curling in a wastebasket, a gold badge catching the light, lawmakers rising in applause, two hands clasping in reconciliation, a young woman stepping to a podium. Over it all, Naomi's voice carries, steady and reflective. Justice is not revenge. It is transformation. It takes what was meant to break us and builds from it instead. It turns humiliation into evidence, evidence into law, and law into legacy. The montage shifts. Faces of passengers holding phones, crowds chanting justice, Aisha as a child holding her mother's hand. Then years later, standing tall beside her, one passport burned. But millions of journeys are safer now. One act of cruelty tried to erase identity. Instead, it wrote protection into law. That is what justice can do when we refuse silence. The music swells gently, hopeful rather than triumphant. Naomi's voice continues, "I was one witness, but justice does not belong to me. It belongs to everyone willing to see, to speak, to remember." That is how systems change, not from power alone, but from people who insist dignity is not negotiable. The camera lingers on Naomi's desk, where the charred passport fragment lies beside the Reform Act. Then the narration turns outward, addressing viewers directly. You have your own stories. Times you were overlooked, doubted, dismissed. Times you saw someone treated as less. Those stories matter. They are not small. They are seeds of change if you choose to share them. The montage shows ordinary people, students, parents, travelers, holding phones, writing notes, raising hands. So tell your story. Tell it to your community, your leaders, your children. And together, the voices of many can become the law that protects us all. Because if one burned passport can change the world, then your voice can too. The screen fades to black. White text appears, "Justice is not finished." It begins with you. Subscribe to Black Voices Justice for more stories that reveal truth, inspire dignity, and demand change. Share this video, because the more voices join, the stronger justice becomes. And comment below, what is your story? What truth needs to be heard? The last note holds, then silence, and with that silence, the audience is left not with closure, but with a beginning. When a single page turns to ash, millions of new pages wait to be written. Do you believe your story could spark change? Leave it in the comments, and let's write the next chapter together.